Say you? Well, if it's not you, and it's not me, there's only one person it could be. Seal Pup. There we are. Seal Pup is our in-studio guest today, much as Christmas Fish was yesterday. Seal Pup's a new addition. He's only been around for about a year or so. So he's in a bit better shape than Christmas Fish, but there we are. We don't hold that against either of them. We don't discriminate here at Gold Coast After Dark, and thank you for tuning in again. I think in the past I said this is kind of like a time capsule sort of thing, maybe, for my grandson Jax. But that's really like a late 50s, early 60s sort of thing to do, put stuff in time capsules. So this is more like really messages from a deep space probe that take a few years to get back to Earth. That's really more what it's like. Okay? Before we get started, another thing. As I said, the show is constantly evolving. It is an organic process. And so what we're going to do is the readings are going to be a bit shorter, okay, which will be easier on everybody. Be easier on me, trying not to make a mistake, being easier on you, fab listener and watcher, for not having to listen to me drone on for half an hour. So there'll be shorter segments, but that means there'll be more of them to get through the book. But that's what we're going to do, and I think that will probably improve the experience for all concerned. So we'll see how that goes. Other thing, keep those email coming in. The day after tomorrow, which is Friday the 16th, Jimmy Page Turner, friend of the show, director of marketing for Bapadoo Records, Bapadoo Books, and now honcho over correspondence here for Gold Coast After Dark, will be back to answer your questions about anything in his own inimitable fashion. Now, if Friday is the 16th, that means today, Wednesday, two things about it. One, it is Wear Your Old Black Sweater Wednesday, which I did. This is my old black sweater, but I took it off because it got too warm. So, the other thing is this is Bastille Day for our French cousins. Vive la France, vive la Révolution. You know, yeah. So, and hey, thanks for your help during our own revolution, without which we would still be probably colonies of the British Crown. So, thank you for that. Okay. So, here we go. We're going to pick up after Halloween. And like I said, this will be a shorter stop. So, in the book, there's Mr. Three of Spades to tell us where we start. This is actually, in the book, this is actually part 2 after Halloween, All Souls Day. So here we go. All right, Sunday morning, November 1st, All Souls Day began with a fog so thick I couldn't see the brightly painted picnic table in the middle of the backyard. I couldn't see the shed just beyond it, the trees and shrubs that ring the backyard, even the building across the street. No sky, no nothing. A freakish patch of warm air must have descended on the area overnight, which is the sort of thing that happens when you live dangerously close to the ocean, as we do. A check of the online 3-day weather forecast did indeed verify this. Fog was expected to stick around until sometime in the afternoon, and there was also a chance of rain in the early evening. So, kind of like today here. Anyway, at 1 o'clock, visibility had improved enough that I figured it'd be safe to hit at least the local streets. But on the other side of the A20 highway, around the forest and Boogie's Hill, I don't know. My mind conjured up images of the fog shrouded more of Hound of the Baskervilles, uh, zero visibility and an oppressive, eerie silence, broken every so often by the unfamiliar cry of a bird unseen and unknown to those not born to the area. I figure the view from Boogie's Hill, well, it was easy to imagine that. Sort of a smooth blanket of fog from west and south, ghostly forest to the north and east. That might make for an interesting video. My flute would be staying home. Remember, we talked about that. You got to take care of them. Can't take your instrument out. You shouldn't take your instrument out in inclement weather. So the flute would be staying home, but my phone and its camera would definitely be coming along. Now, as far as elevation goes, Boogie's Hill will never be confused with the foothills of the Himalayas, the Alps, or the Sierra Madre of northwestern Mexico. From the bike path, on this particular day, the summit was completely obscured by fog, but once you're up there, the view was much as I'd imagine it would be, and was in fact captured on video for those friends and family members who enjoy such non-touristy visuals. I lives to serve, you might say, sometimes. Um, Now, visibility down the avenue of trees was, if possible, even worse than on the main path. True Hollywood horror flick stuff, the fog thicker than thick, could not cut it with a knife, as they say. Still and silent, as on the main path, I hugged the right side, rang my bell now and again, even though I felt confident I was all by my lonesome. But I wasn't. Now, exactly where I was in the avenue when I heard it was impossible to determine. Not that far off the main path, I didn't think. What did I hear? A saxophone. 3 notes, a rest, then 4 notes, the same 7 notes as the last time. Another rest, then the first 3 notes were repeated. This time they were followed by 4 different notes. Now they seemed to be coming from somewhere up ahead and to the right. And the first time I'd heard them, they'd also come from the right of the path, and of course that was the direction the mysterious traveler I'd seen that day would have been coming from. More or less. Maybe. It's hard to tell in a fog-shrouded forest just where things come from. Well, it took a lot longer than I might have liked, but eventually the path curved around to the right and out of the avenue of trees. As I passed the familiar first gate and cattle guard, traces of a few notes drifted through the mist. I was farther from the source, but the player was still out there. Finally, I reached the second gate. Leaving the path, when I reached the long canopy of interlaced branches, I remembered the surface from one end to the other had been flat, no dips or bumps, no obstacles. Even so, I didn't want to chance the sudden appearance of a branch that had maybe somehow managed to fall onto the path since my last visit, so I continued to push rather than ride my bike, but at a faster pace, almost a jog. Now, coming out from under the canopy, the fog was not as dense as it had been through the avenue of trees, and remembering the path ran straight and true, due west, with no dips or bumps, there was no reason not to mount up and proceed on 2 wheels at, to use an old naval expression, best possible speed, which means as fast as you can safely manage, And remember, as we talked about last time, safety first, right? Okay. Now, once more, I heard the notes, the same three opening notes, a rest, then four more notes. Player was still ahead and to the right, not close, but a lot closer. My guess was he was somewhere along the second path I'd come to earlier between this path and the avenue of trees. Passing the first intersecting path, I heard the saxophone again, but after the opening three notes and pause, there followed a longer passage. There's nothing I recognized, of course. Uh, Whoever was playing for themselves and their surroundings, playing simply for the sound and feel. Now, this may come as a surprise, or maybe not, but it was only now that I began to wonder about the players, male, female, old, young, where did they come from, and how they decide on wherever they were as a place to play. Um, it was only at that moment that it occurred to me that they might not look too kindly on my unannounced and uninvited arrival. After all, they're in the forest. It wasn't too much of a stretch to think they wanted a bit of privacy when they played, which is something I could certainly appreciate. Um, but it wasn't like they'd gone deep into the forest primeval either. The avenue of trees wasn't all that far away, and it was a popular route for bikers and joggers, hikers and dog walkers, as we have discussed. Of course, there's a question of how many people are going to chase down the sound of a saxophone in the woods. Probably not many, especially when you can't see the source or a more or less direct route to its location. But as an old saying has it, there's one in every crowd, and often that one has turned out to be, that's right, me. Well, if I was going to give any serious thought, because all this time I'm still riding along, you remember, uh, if I was going to give any serious thought to turning around and leaving the mystery as a mystery, that moment had passed. The player was ahead and to the right, leaning against a large oak tree. He looked as if he had been about to play, but paused when he saw me. He held his instrument in position to play, but the mouthpiece was tilted away from his face. He raised the saxophone slightly as if in greeting, nodded, then proceeded to play the now familiar three-note opening, followed by two passages, each of four notes. Now, he was dressed in a rather singular fashion, especially for this day and age. From top to bottom, he had a worn black sort of floppy slouch hat, I believe is what they used to describe him as. He wore a brown tweed coat that came to the top of his knees and a pair of black rubber boots, the kind the English called Wellingtons, that came up just to the bottom of his knees. Um, he wore a dove gray woolen scarf that was knotted at the neck and tucked inside the coat. And he also wore those brown wool fingerless gloves that people who dress like that always seem to wear. I don't know where you get those things. I don't know why you would wear them. I mean, it's kind of pointless, really. Um, you know, but hey, what do I know? Okay. Physically, to look at him, from that little bit of distance, he was probably a few inches shorter than me and slender. um, and a fact that his outer garments could not conceal. It was obviously that this guy was not a bodybuilder, okay? And I mean that in a good sense. I don't mean that as a knock in any way. It also looked, as if he probably hadn't shaved in 2 or 3 days. He had a bit of stubble, and he had dark brown hair sort of tumbled over the color of his coat, but he wasn't shabby looking, despite those gloves. His clothes were clean, his hair at least looked clean, and his saxophone positively gleamed. I don't know how else to put it. He, he looked like someone you would expect to find leaning against a tree playing a saxophone. Off to his right, looking like a refugee from a pawn shop, was a battered saxophone case. In front of him and slightly to his left, uh, and it was the only object that struck me as unusual, yet not entirely out of place, all things considered, was a chipped antique-looking china saucer with yellow, brown, and red birds painted around the edge. Several brightly colored leaves lay in the saucer, as if the forest had tipped him for his efforts. He blew two clusters of notes, followed by the three-note coda, paused, then lowered his saxophone. Hello. His lips formed a half smile, which appeared to be their natural state, and when he blinked, his eyes appeared to twinkle, ever so briefly, from the shadow of his hat. Oh, hey, um, I didn't mean to interrupt. I heard you playing the other week, um, and when I heard you today, I thought I'd try to find you. And so you have. You're not Dutch. No, neither are you. Not as such, no. It's a foggy day. Yeah, but I needed the exercise. I'm indoors too much as it is, and with winter coming on, you know, diminished opportunities. Exactly. He raised the saxophone, played the three-note fanfare, paused, played four notes, paused again, followed by another four notes, another pause, and then the three-note coda. Well, like I said, I didn't mean to interrupt. Remembering I had two horse chestnuts in my backpack I'd picked up a few weeks earlier, I motioned toward the china saucer and its stack of leaves. Are those tips from the tree? I think it's their idea of a joke. The barking mad. Barking mad. That's terrible. Do you really think so? That's a shame. I spent some time on that one. Is it really that bad? Well, I've heard worse. And if it was really that bad, I shrugged off my backpack and reached into a side pocket. I would give you these two horse chestnuts and tell you to buy yourself another joke. Instead, I'll just say thank you, and it's been an unexpected pleasure. So saying, I placed both chestnuts on the chipped saucer. He seemed genuinely pleased by the gesture. That's very generous of you. Thank you so much. There's no need to rush off, though. Of course, the weather's not the best. Well, like I said, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to find out who's playing a saxophone. Do you play saxophone? No, I play guitar and bass. I noodle around on other things. I do have a flute, but I'm only just starting out. A flute. Now that's interesting. Well, not yet, it isn't. Uh, I played a bit 50 years ago, and about a month ago I decided to pick it up again. I think that's very interesting. Do you have it with you? No, it's at home. I didn't want to expose it to the weather. Oh, yeah, very wise, very wise. Do you practice every day? Well, I explained that I did. Until the weather had turned, I'd been working out up on Boogie's Hill as often as possible. Not surprisingly, he didn't recognize the name. Boogie's Hill? It's a little hill sort of over that way, kind of southwest. I don't know if it has a proper name or not. Probably does, but I don't know what it is. Well, why Boogie's Hill? Well, I had a little dog back in the States named Boogie. I didn't bring him here because he was old and he was having a lot of health problems. So my sister and her family took him in, and took care of him for the last 18 months of his life. When he passed, she sent me his blanket and his ashes. And one day, when the conditions were right, I went up there and spread his ashes on the back of the north wind. He raised his saxophone to his lips, played the three-note fanfare, paused, followed with one of the four-note variations, then played a cluster of notes, the last one high and sustained, drifting off. To my surprise, he didn't play the three-note coda. To my greater surprise, a bright red leaf came slowly spinning down and landed on the saucer. That was for Boogie. Hey, yeah, but you didn't play the three-note coda. A coda marks the end, something the spirit never does, not even a little dog's. I managed a teary-eyed thank you. And it's break time. Okay, because look, there's Mr. Jack of Hearts still dancing to tell us that it is time to end for the day. We're still gone over 20 minutes, which is probably about 5 minutes longer than I intended. I am sorry about that. We'll try to do better next time. Like I said, without losing too much of the story or rushing through to where I'm mumbling and you kind of keep going, what's he saying? Because that can happen. So, as a reminder, again, Jimmy will be here Friday, and for It's the Mail, and we'll be back again with more of these shorter episodes of Gold Coast After Dark. So, from me and Seal Pub, thanks for tuning in.